we look at both bodies, they have quite a good level of formal independence. They're set up under broad and permissive legislation. They do publish their own strategic plans and their annual reports. They do choose their cases and their fields of work. And they have taken independent attitudes on a number of issues, and I particularly cite the work of the Human Rights Commission in speaking out on Ireland's record on extreme rendition through Shannon. So they do comply with many of the formal features of internal independence, but, and I think there are a number of quite important buts about this, and we raise these concerns in our report. First of all, there seems to be pretty complete ministerial power to appoint members of both bodies, which runs up against the pluralist representation of civil society, which are many of the underlying principles for such bodies in other countries. Both bodies report to the minister, not to the Parliament, which is a second problem area. There is no, and we saw this in the autumn of last year, protection or insulation of budgets. No one is arguing that such insulation should be total, but there's a difference between total insulation and what we have at the moment, which is none at all. The selection procedures for the boards are opaque. They are mysterious. There is no published documentation on who gets to be proposed, who gets to be chosen, who gets to be added onto lists, who gets to be taken off lists. So it's very much a behind closed doors system. It is difficult to see how both bodies can be completely independent when, in the case of the Equality Authority, there is a substantial level of civil service as distinct from public service staffing. And people come from the civil service and may well go back there, which is quite a difficult and a tricky issue. And finally, we had introduced last year departmental representation on the board of the Equality Authority, which was something new and a significant change. These raise, in our views, some significant questions around these issues, and we came to the following conclusions, and these are our substantial conclusions: that the design of both bodies does not now reach the most modern application of the Paris Principles, the EU directive which sets down the terms for the Equality Authority now, and the ECRI recommendations. So they do not reach the most modern application of these principles. That their independence has been compromised by the behind closed door system of appointments, by accountability to the minister and not to the Oireachtas, by the lack of any financial insulation from ministers acting capriciously, and by the issue of staffing. We found the staffing a very difficult issue to raise because in a country as small and intimate and, I think as someone said earlier, cosy as Ireland, it is very difficult to not do this without people reacting fairly personally. But independent staffing would seem to be at the core of principles of independent bodies such as this. We also noted that the kind of experience that has happened in Ireland has happened in other countries as well. That in other countries, equality bodies and human rights bodies have had disagreements with governments, and it has not been unusual for governments to punish those bodies for disagreeing with them by substantial reductions in their money. Though interestingly, all of those bodies have come back to live and work another day. So we do have a number of key recommendations. The obvious ones, I suppose, are to restore the funding of both bodies, to make these bodies compliant with the European Union, Paris Principles, ECRI Principles in practice through transference of accountability to Parliament, budget insulation, transparent selection procedures, the ending of departmental representation on the board of the Equality Authority, and through systems of independent staffing. That they should use their full powers, and Cathy outlined to you how both bodies had not used their full powers in the full extent that they could have, partly due to financial but maybe other reasons as well. And that they should engage with both to help build a regular, structured dialogue with civil society. Language, incidentally, which I've lifted from the Treaty of Lisbon that we've recently approved and which our government has approved and signed up to. That kind of engagement with NGOs is absolutely essential for the health of both bodies and for society as a whole. We make a number of recommendations around more structural issues. There are divergent views of the potential for reform. Some people said to us, look, these bodies are now broken. They cannot now be fixed. They are beyond the point of no return. As against others who said, yes, they are still worth preserving. We should rebuild them and reconstruct them, and they're valuable for those reasons. We were very clearly of the view that a merger of the two existing bodies as they stand now and as possibly contemplated in political proposals would lead to even less than the sums of their two parts. But we do suggest, in trying to be constructive out of this very difficult situation, the consideration be given to a unified structure of equality, human rights and other agencies. There are conceptual and practical advantages to doing so. They could enable the anti-racism role that has been undermined in the past year to be rebuilt, and a social inclusion role to be rebuilt, bearing in mind what has happened to the Combat Poverty Agency, and bearing in mind that some commissions abroad, South Africa for example, do have strong mandates in the area of social inclusion. Such an approach could enable there to be a fresh start and set behind us the extraordinary trauma that these bodies have been through in the past couple of years. But, two very important buts, they must be carefully designed. The design of these bodies is not just a matter of detail. The design in all these things is of enormous importance, and it's not easy either. And there must be a process of open consultation and true and fair and transparent engagement between civil society and government. And I think you heard Karen this morning speak of the difficulties that have been experienced in Britain, and a warning of the kind of difficulties when you don't do this right. And just finally, we come back to recommendations for NGOs and civil society, and I'd like to echo what Donald said a moment ago, which is that this and the future is very much going to be up to us, everyone here in this room, and civil society as a whole. And our recommendations here are that we do continue to work on this issue. We do continue to track the impacts of the cuts using the system that has been designed and recommended here in the later stages of the report. That the NGO sector does work to ensure that the Equality Authority and the Human Rights Commission are brought up to the international standards, the three sets of principles that we laid down earlier. And that we do work hard to construct a renewed equality and human rights infrastructure. That we must engage in this process of designing such a new structure and going with those proposals to the political parties, and particularly those parties that may be in government over the next number of years, and persuade them that this is the way forward. But above all, I come back to the point made by many people so far today. We must develop a counter discourse against the prevailing "there is no alternative," the "we are where we are," etc. argument, which says that the values of going forward should be about equality, which should be about rights and fairness and strong effective public services and institutions, and those must be underpinning arguments behind all that we must come to say over the next number of years. Thank you very much.